She stood before the mirror, meticulously applying lipstick as if preparing for an awards show rather than facing the end of a marriage. Her movements were deliberate, almost theatrical, a stark contrast to the quiet devastation that had become our reality. Without facing me, she suddenly said, "I've been fooling myself for too long. You were never enough for me." Her voice was flat, devoid of the usual warmth, a definitive finality in her tone. I said nothing, still clutching her necklace, the one I had painstakingly untangled that very day, convinced I was helping, but now seeing how pathetic that gesture seemed in this moment. It was a small relic, a silent testament to the effort I'd put into maintaining a fragile thread of connection. She slipped on her heels with a measured grace, then paused to eye me dismissively, like spoiled food something discarded, unwanted. Her lips curled into a tight smile as she added, "I need someone who challenges me intellectually, not someone waiting for approval." She grabbed her coat, the gesture brisk, as if dismissing a minor inconvenience, and looked back one last time, her expression icy. "You're not worthy, Bennett. You never were." Those words, her final utterance before slipping out the door, drifted through the silence like a shadow. No tears, no drama, just a quiet, deliberate exit, as if her departure was a slow fade in a film. I didn't chase her. I remained grounded in the doorway, in socks, clutching the worn trinket that had once symbolized hope, but now felt like a piece of a broken puzzle. I stood there, rooted in the grief of what had fallen apart. I wondered, was it when she stopped asking about my day, or that dinner when she called me nice, as if it was an insult? Did it happen when she stopped trying, or when her words became weapons? Honestly, it didn't matter. She was gone, just like that. I gave her space, knowing some things can't be forced or salvaged. 2 days later, I moved out resigned to a tiny apartment above a laundromat that reeked of burnt clothes and lost dreams. It resembled living as a ghost. Wake, work, eat delivery, scroll aimlessly through screens, unconnected, invisible. Months dragged on in this liminal state until I received an unexpected invitation, a glossy paper for our 20-year high school reunion. Same gym, now trimmed with bright new lights. The sight of it made my stomach churn, an odd mixture of nostalgia and dread. Same place, different time. I almost tossed the invitation into the trash, but then I saw her name on the committee. Waverly. Not simply attending, but leading. Something pulled me, a ghost of hope, maybe, that I could see her one last time, get answers, or perhaps find closure. I didn't plan anything. I just pressed a clean shirt and carried a faint hope she'd recognize me as the person she once loved. That night, the reunion felt surreal, a carefully curated nostalgia show. White lights hung from the ceiling, casting everything in a soft glow. Old songs softly played, a soundtrack to our collective memories. People greeted each other with familiar hugs, laughter, and smiles that masked years of secret judgments and unspoken regrets. I kept to the sidelines, nursing a mug of warm punch, trying to blend in, trying not to be noticed. But then, Kurt Rowley, still tanned, still wearing that too-tight polo, clapped my shoulder with familiar exuberance. "Bennett? You came?" His grin was wide, teasing. Waverly's gonna love that. I felt my stomach tighten. She hadn't arrived yet, as always. My mind jumped to leaving. This wasn't my scene anymore. But somewhere deep inside, I needed to see her. Not for revenge, but for the reckoning only she could give me. Then she arrived late, always late, striding in like she owned the room, hair perfectly curled, a sleek dress hugging her figure, heels clicking with assured confidence, eyes practically demanding attention. Everyone stopped, or so it seemed, as they looked at her. She was the Waverly of old, a commanding presence. With her was him, tall, clean-shaven, exuding smugness. They moved as a perfect, glamorous pair like they belonged in a magazine ad. I instinctively stepped back, lurking in the shadows, heart pounding, playing the role of indifferent observer. I kept my gaze on the floor until, just for a moment, her eyes met mine near the photo booth. A fleeting glance. Her smile faltered, some fleeting flicker of regret or recognition. I needed to look away, but my feet refused. I ducked into a hallway, lungs tightening with exhaustion, on the verge of slipping out. Then, a voice. Bennett. Wait. Her voice. Slowly, I turned toward her. She stood alone, arms crossed defensively, cheeks slightly flushed, unsure of herself. We paused, silent but for the faint hum of distant music. Years of silence hung between us like an invisible wall. Then she broke the tension with a trembling voice. I never wanted you here tonight. It should have shattered me, but instead, it ignited a burning question. What was she hiding? Her eyes reflected fear, not anger, an emotion she rarely showed. She stepped closer, her voice softer, trembling with the weight of unspoken truths. This isn't the time. I didn't expect you. Why invite me? I asked calmly, voice steady despite the storm inside. She brushed past me, her words almost a whisper. It wasn't from me. You shouldn't be here. And then she was gone, slipping into the crowd, leaving me rooted in that hallway, dizzy, confused, betrayed. Outside in the parking lot, I found Tara Marston, her old, sharp-eyed friend, sitting beside me, smoking a cigarette, face serious. Thought you looked lost, she said softly. She offered me a flask, which I declined. You and Waverly still close? I ventured. Tara snorted. Not since she stopped being honest. Her voice hardened. Then she leaned in closer, eyes scanning the dark. You and her, you're both blind, if you don't see the truth. She didn't want you here because the night's built on lies. But you have the power to unravel them. I pressed her. What lie? Her gaze flickered away, hesitant. Ask her about Philip. You'll see why she's scared. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat in my car, watching her, and him leave their laughter too loud, her grip too tight on his arm. Something isn't right, I knew. The next morning, I found the old photo I'd tucked away in our shared cloud, the one I'd thought was irrelevant. It was labeled Event Prep, dated 6 months earlier. In the images, Waverly and Philip had a resort her in a robe, champagne in hand, him smiling over her shoulder. I had assumed she was at a conference. The timestamps proved otherwise. She'd been cheating while I had believed she was working. She had been sharing our bed, our life, with someone else. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. She hadn't just moved on. She had planned her escape carefully. All the signs had been there, buried beneath her lies, while I played the fool thinking I was too passive, too unworthy. Then I called Philip, voice steady but voice trembling beneath. We might have overlapping histories. Coffee this week? He agreed. We met in a quiet cafe. He was polished, straightforward. I showed him the photo. Waverly told me you were over by then, he said, voice serious. We lived together, I said plainly. He stared, processing. I'm not here to ruin you. But if she lied to me, lied in my own bed, she might have lied to you too. He called me later, cold, deliberate. I found something. And we met again, this time for real. The envelope he handed me was thick with documents. Emails, memos, snippets of her bragging about manipulating circumstances, her colleagues, even her own family, bragging about how she'd used people to get ahead. She'd made it seem natural to everyone, calling me the jealous ex while behind the scenes. She'd been weaving her web, She's been lying, he said quietly. She's using everyone, I replied, voice hollow. The next day, Waverly messaged me. Why? I didn't reply. I knew she was trying to reach me, but I was done pretending. Later that evening, she knocked on my door. I opened it slowly. No explanations needed, I said, voice flat. You said I wasn't worthy. She hesitated, eyes glistening. Philip left, she whispered. He doesn't know everything. Apparently, he knows enough, I said. She stepped closer, desperation in her movements. You enjoy this? I chuckled bitterly. No, just closure. Her facade cracked, tears welled in her eyes. I made mistakes, she whispered. But you were passive. You never gave me a fair fight, I shot back. She fell silent. Silent, the kind that screams and tears spilled over, marking her face. I hoped you'd still see me, she murmured. I looked at her, cold and unwavering. You mourned your lies, not me. She faced her downfall, crying quietly, broken. Her story, the one she'd crafted so meticulously, had collapsed around us, and I hadn't been the trigger. It was her own choices, her secrets, her betrayals that shattered everything we'd built. And in the end, I realized I hadn't pulled the trigger. She'd done it herself.